So this is my third test of the new version 1.1 firmware. I'm using my do-it-yourself parabolic reflector on the transmitter to increase the range. So tests from the previous flight showed that the software seemed to be working fine, so on this occasion I'm just going to get it up in the air, quickly test that all the modes are working, and then slip on the goggles and head out towards Mount Tennant. So I'm in manual mode, the trim of the plane all seems to be fine, so I'm just about to start doing my I'm just switching it into autopilot mode. I've got 4 waypoints, or 3 waypoints I should say, set up around the field, A, B and C. So they're all set at 100 metres. So the plane seems to be climbing up to the first one, and seems to be doing the circuit quite happily. So it seems to be maintaining the altitude fine. I end up doing a couple of circuits just to make sure, but yeah, quite happy with the performance of it. So the next step is to switch it in a manual, then into return to home mode while I'm flying away from home, just to make sure it responds correctly. It initially turns left back towards home, but once it gets there it starts doing right hand circles at the 100 metres it's set for, as it was programmed to do, so that seems to be fine as well. So altitude's pretty steady, so again return to home seems to be working as intended. So next I do a quick test of the loiter mode. I fly it out from home a little bit just to see how it performs, and it seems to be working perfectly well. It seems to be maintaining around about 100 metres of altitude and turning in a right hand circle. So everything seems to be working fine, so I set about putting my headset on and getting ready to fly out towards Mount Tennant. So I've got the headset on, I take it out of loiter mode and put it into PA mode, and start to head out towards the mountain. It picks up a heading lock fairly quickly, but I'm still too low to be flying to the mountain, so I start putting a bit of altitude on it, and I actually decide to fly off to the left side of the mountain just in case something does go wrong. I won't have such a climb to get it back. At this point I just want to confirm that the heading and altitude locks work, so I let go of the controls and have no trouble locking the heading and the altitude, so that seems to be working fine. At this point I start putting on some serious altitude. I need to get up to about 400 metres, and I'm heading well to the left of the mountain to stay over relatively level ground in case I do get into trouble. So I'm in PO mode at about 400 metres altitude. I'm about 1.5 kilometres out, and the video is starting to get a bit snowy. The signal strength's pretty good, and I've got heading and altitude locks, so I decide I might turn back to the mountain and hope that the video signal improves. I also switch it into loiter mode so I can have a bit of a play with the receiver antenna positioning. So it slips into loiter mode pretty well straight away. I'm at 443 metres. What I didn't notice at the time was that the RSSI indicator suddenly dropped to bugger all. It also starts to lose altitude fairly rapidly, but I wasn't really paying attention as I was playing with the antenna on my receiver. I didn't have much luck capturing a signal apart from a couple of flashes, and eventually decided to put it into return to home mode. This is the last clear frame that the video showed. It's still in loiter mode. It's dropped from 430 down to 196 metres, and there is no radio signal. Needless to say, the plane didn't come home. Whether it hit the ground or whether it levelled out, I just don't know. My initial thoughts on reviewing this video were that the reason the plane lost altitude was that the loiter altitude is linked to the return to home altitude, which is set at 100 metres, and I had set the return to home at alt parameter to yes. I'm not so sure now that I've listened to some of the views on the RC Group's forum for the Cyclops Tornado. Several people who have been using the loiter mode are telling me that the loiter altitude has no direct relation to the return to home altitude at all. I'm also not certain why the receiver didn't put the model into return to home mode when the RSSI went down to 0.